And we welcome now Representative Hank Zuber. He's a representative for District 113. That includes Jackson County. He serves as the chair of the House State Affairs Committee. Representative Zuber, good to see you, sir.
Gerard, good to see you. Thank you for having me, and happy birthday again.
Oh, appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Zuber. Sure thing. We just had Senator David Parker on earlier, and he said to tell you hello, by the way. I told him you were coming on after him. He wanted to extend his greetings to you, so he's headed back down to the Capitol.
Gerard, he's a good member. I enjoy working with him. He's very professional, very competent, and hardworking.
He definitely is. So let's start with something that you have been advocating for some time and did once again this year, and that is the various laws around the sale of alcohol. Where do we stand that? Direct ship of wine specifically, perhaps granting licenses to big box stores, grocery operators, and then even extending hours on Sundays for liquor stores. What's the latest on all the various legislation?
Well, Gerard, first of all, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about that, because it kind of gets lost in the weeds sometimes. But yeah. Whenever it comes to our alcohol public policy, Mississippi is not in the 20th century. It is in the 19th century. We are one of only 2 or 3 states that do not have direct ship. Specifically, Gerard, we had 3 bills that the House sent over to the Senate. Direct ship of wine that's not carried by ABC. In other words, you can order and have wine that the state does not carry that you cannot get at your local liquor store and have that directly shipped to your house. We also had Sunday sales. And last but not least, which it gets me so frustrated, I just do not understand the opposition to increasing the liquor permits that one individual or entity can have from 1 to 3. And if I may, let me tell you why that is so important. I heard the Lieutenant Governor, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before, he was on the Paul Gallo show. And Gerard, he talked about how he went to Costco's and he was able to shop at Costco's and had a great time. It was a great experience. Well, why doesn't he and the Senate allow his fellow Mississippians to have that same experience and have a Costco's in South Mississippi or North Mississippi? Right now, that is precluded because, as you know, the business model for Costco's, the business model for Trader Joe's, the fresh market is the sale of alcohol. And if you can only have one permit, the largest geographical location we have in the state is the Jackson metropolitan area. That's where they're going to locate. So if the law does not change, you will never have a Costco. You will never have a Trader Joe's. You will never have a fresh market in anywhere else in this state besides Jackson. And that's not right. It's not fair. To me, it's a quality of life. The younger generation, they expect to be able to shop at a Costco or a Trader Joe's.
What was the rationale, Representative Zuber, originally around not allowing an operator such as a Costco that's going to have multiple locations in a state from having more than one license? What's that all about exactly?
Well, a good question. I wish somebody would tell me what the opposition is. I'm assuming that they're afraid it's going to close down your local mom and pop liquor store, which I might add, Costco has been in existence, I think, for maybe a year or a year and a half, and not one liquor store has closed down since the opening of Costco.
Right. So I live almost walking distance from the Costco here in Ridgeland. So, I can attest to that. The liquor stores are still thriving in the area as well. Okay. So some cronied up legislation that's got some history behind it when that got enacted that you and I probably never understand or know the reasoning for.
But, I want to challenge, the lieutenant governor, he's doing a great job, but I challenge him and the Senate to do what's right and to bring Mississippi into the 21st century on this issue. And like I said, he was on the radio yesterday talking about Costco's and how great it was. Well, let's our fellow Mississippians in other parts of the state share in that same experience and have that same opportunity as the lieutenant governor has.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the reasons that perhaps we should pass a ballot initiative in the state. I'm wondering if that is not something we'd see get to the ballot for the citizens to approve and enact into law, into statute, which was would be allowable, I believe, perhaps under a bill that passed through the House, a resolution, if you will, and then went to the Senate and got killed.
Well, obviously it's sheer speculation, but if it was on the ballot, I think it would pass. I mean, overwhelmingly. I don't think there would be any question about that. But again, I mean, I'm assuming that the opposition is based on protecting your local mom and pop liquor store. But, as you may know, the legislation just increased the permits from 1 to 3. So if it had passed, you would be looking at a Costco. And by the way, Costco is looking at a location on the Gulf Coast right now, but they can't, they can't open because of the way the law is. But the law would or the bill that we sent over to the Senate would just simply allow an entity or an individual to increase their ownership permit, their liquor permit from 1 to 3. So if it did pass, I would venture to guess that you would probably have a Costco and a Trader Joe's somewhere in South Mississippi on the coast, maybe in Hattiesburg and possibly somewhere in DeSoto County.
Well, you could make the same argument about mobile sports betting, something we just discussed with Senator Parker, that too is looks like it's maybe not in the dead category, but it's dang close. I'm not sure we're going to get anything, especially after Senator Blunt in the Senate essentially stripped the House language, Representative Urey's language, and replaced it with just placeholder stuff for to be, I guess, go to conference. But I don't think we're going to get out of that. It seems like, Representative Zuber, if I could just make an observation here, we are fully practicing protectionism in the great state of Mississippi, whether it's vehicles or liquor stores or gaming. I don't know. We don't sound like we're very friendly to free markets here.
Well, that is obviously true on some of these issues, but let me remind you, I've been around for a long time, Gerard, and we still have a lot of time. I mean,
okay.
Things can happen overnight at the Capitol, as you know,
Okay.
and I think that will be worked out. I think we will work out the MAEP funding formula. I think we'll come to an agreement on Medicaid, and that reminds me, if I may.
Sure.
I remember it was about this time. Well, I'm sorry. It was last summer. The Jason White came down for a social event, and I remember I did a little introduction for him, and I remember saying, Gerard, that I am energized again because we're going to look at some things that have not been looked at in 30, 40, or 50 years. And everybody kind of looked at me like, well, what do you mean by that? And yeah, we've heard this before. But I don't think anybody doubts me now that that the speaker has provided the leadership to look at issues that have been kind of, swept underneath the rug and kept in the dark for 40, 50, 60 years. I mean, it's refreshing. And like I said, I'm energized again. We're looking at Medicaid. We're looking at MAEP. We're looking at the CON process. We're looking at our alcohol policy. We're looking at PERS. I mean, it's refreshing to me, and it's given me a lot of energy to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I think that's largely true. So speaking of PERS, let's go ahead and tackle that one. A very controversial measure, HB 1590, which would have restructured the PERS board, something you obviously had some involvement in. That also was met with resistance in the Senate. In fact, Senator Chris Johnson didn't even put it up for a vote in his committee, and thus it has died. If Senator Parker, who was just on, has offered an amendment in another bill that would essentially cancel the scheduled 2% employer increase and also remove that authority from the PERS board. We got a break right now. I hope you can hang with us, Representative Zuber. We can continue this discussion and pick up where we left off on PERS on the other side.
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to.
Representative Hank Zuber represents District 113. Jackson County is our guest in the Element Wealth studio. We'll get to PERS and Medicaid expansion next. Stay with us. But right now we're having a discussion with Representative Hank Zuber. So, Representative Zuber, let's get back on this PERS thing, HB 1590. I believe you were the author of that legislation. Is that correct?
I was, and I don't know what else can really be said about PERS. I think we've discussed pretty much every issue that we can talk about. But, the House position, Gerard, was because of the continuing downward trend of the unfunded liability. We were simply trying to bring a fresh set of eyes to look at everything. And what people forget, and what really hasn't been talked about, whenever I say everything, I mean, how much money do we need to put into it? Because it looks like we're going to have to put some money into it. That was part of the equation, which people don't want to talk about. The high four, which nobody wanted to talk about. Slur, which nobody wanted to talk about. So it wasn't just about benefits. We wanted a new set of fresh eyes to look at everything, the whole system. And if I may, the best analogy that I can give you and your listening audience is that we were simply trying to maybe plant that tree, that small tree today, so that 30, 40, 50 years from now, Mississippi employees and retirees could enjoy the shade that was being provided by that tree that we planted today. We were simply trying to make sure that the system stays viable for future generations.
Yeah, I understand. So you're obviously aware that I think across the board, PERS members strongly objected to this proposal to reconstitute the board, feeling like that the board need to be as is, structured as is, which is 8 of the 10 present members elected by the various groups within the PERS membership. And, of course, this would have changed that so that 7, it would extend the membership to a total of 11 on the board, 7 of which would be appointed, 2 elected by the PERS members. There are a lot of objections to that, as you well know. I think everybody I talked to in the Capitol said their phone was blowing up from PERS members that were strongly urging them to vote against this legislation. I think at the end of the day, Senator Chris Johnson didn't have the votes in his committee, and thus your bill, HB 1590, was not even voted on in the committee. It seems like we're kind of nowhere, but if I'm a betting man, I'd say you guys are going to end up writing a big old check every year for a number of years to PERS to stabilize the trust fund.
Well, and Gerard, that may very well be part of the solution. But let me back up and address the comment that you made about the feedback that we got from the retirees. Yes, and we listened to them. I listened to them. I understand their concern. And I do applaud the Senate for eventually taking some action. But the point I want to make today is that there is no animosity between the legislature and the PERS board, or at least not from me personally. As a matter of fact, after the bill was introduced, I think I passed not one but 2 other bills that were recommended from PERS out of my committee. So I don't want anyone to have the impression that there's some type of animosity or anger between the legislature and the PERS board or anybody that is upset. We will have to work with the PERS board. We will continue to work with them. Hopefully we can move forward as a partnership and work together to solve the issues. And we do have some long-term issues that's admitted by everybody that's involved in this to come up with a solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's where we are. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is about the supplemental legislative retirement plan. There is this feeling widely held among the PERS members that the legislature gets this special perk, if you will, this special additional benefit, that they're members of PERS. They get this special supplemental legislative retirement plan to layer on top of that. They see that as unfair. Would you be in favor of phasing out the supplemental legislative retirement plan?
Absolutely. I don't even know what the benefits are under Slurp. I did not even know that there was a Slurp whenever I ran for office. But I'll take it a step further. I have been on record for the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to look into the high four that we have. And you know about that. And I'm not sure if I haven't run the numbers, but the high four may have more of a detrimental effect on PERS than Slurp. But and that I get back to the bill. That was the original intent of the bill, was to bring a new set of fresh eyes to look at all of that, including infusing a large amount of money into the plan. But I will say this, and like I've been an advocate for removing the high four. I mean, for years and years. It's not fair. It is not fair for, let's just say, a member of the legislature to work 20, 24 years and make, I don't know, 40, 45,000 a year. And then he or she knows somebody and gets appointed to another office, whatever that may be, making 150, 180, and they work at that job for 4 years, they retire, and their retirement is based on that $180,000 that they made for the last 4 years of employment. Gerard, that is not fair, and it needs to be stopped.
Well, not only is it, I guess you could describe it as not fair, but from a financial perspective, it doesn't work. It's one of the reasons that the fund is in trouble, is because you pay in the majority of your active work life and career at one pay level, and then you draw benefits at another, and you haven't effectively, neither side, the employer or employee, has put enough in the fund to pay benefits on that basis. But that would, Representative Zuber, represent a modification to the benefit structure. Of course, only the legislature can do that. And there are some who would say, well, that's inequitable. That's not fair. That's not what I signed up for. That's not what was committed to me.
Well, that's a good point, but all that stuff needs to be brought to the table and maybe looked at moving forward. That's not something that you can do retroactive, but I think everybody would agree with me that that's something that needs to be looked at from here into the future.
Perhaps in the creation of a new tier where we would define the benefit plan the way that you suggested, which is to take into consideration something other than the high four. Maybe it's high 8, or maybe it's the average over their entire work career. I don't know, something that's a little more normalized than just tilted toward those last 4 high-earning years, which is what it is right now. And I think it's fair to say that the system gets from a financial perspective, it gets distorted a little bit because the inputs don't equal the outputs. That's why we're in trouble, honestly.
Right. Whatever the actuaries would come back with, I mean, that's what should be considered. But Gerard, everyone wants to talk about PERS. There's a lot of other things that the legislature and that the State Affairs Committee has worked on, including campaign finance reform. It didn't make it through the process, but this is something that you know about, that we have talked about on numerous occasions. The State Affairs Committee will look at the whole procurement structure that we have in place for state government, which has the attention of businesses like Google and Apple and AWS. So we're going to continue to look at the procurement infrastructure that we have in place, and how can we make it more efficient? How can we make it more timely and more business friendly? And I assure you that we're going to have some meetings this summer. We're going to invite Google, Apple, AWS, Oregon, some of the big businesses that we have, and we're going to make our procurement process much better.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is desperately needed. It needs to be modernized somewhat. I can tell you, as a vendor to the state of Mississippi for over 3 decades in the IT area, the procurement process in Mississippi is among the best, if not the best, I've ever seen at a state level. Just wanted to pass that on. And I've done business in my career with a number of other states. So we actually do it really good here. But, of course, we should always be striving to even improve that. So I certainly applaud you for that.
Absolutely. And something else we were looking at is like I mentioned earlier, is campaign finance reform. We were studying the possibility of, with the support of the Secretary of State. Actually, it was his idea. He was kind of the sponsor of the bill, but have a central location where all public officials would file their campaign finance reports. So, that's got some issues that we need to kind of work out. But the concept itself, like you just said, to me, it makes sense also. So we're going to continue looking at that.
We're up against the break. Can you hang around and talk some more? We're up against the break.
Yes. One more second.
All right, got it. Representative Hank Zuber coming.